Hi, everyone. Hi. So my name's Derek. What is my educational background? Let's see. So, so I went to Oakland Tech High School. That's pretty important to me. Um, and then I went to University of California at Santa Cruz. Got a bachelor's degree in sociology, a banana slug. Um, then I did about 40 graduate units of master's in sociology at Cal State Hayward, which is now Cal State East Bay. And I did my project on a black men's program, boys program I was starting. And so I was told that my thesis was too much activism and not enough scholarship. And so I had to do another thesis if I was to get a degree after doing 40 course units. So I quit and left. And I started over a separate master's degree program at a small college in San Francisco called New College of California, which is now closed. And I started from scratch. So I got a master's degree in humanities there with an emphasis on social change and activism. So I studied revolutions for 2 years. And then my last educational adventure was in this program, the SF State EdD program. What are some of the jobs that led to this position, my current position? So I'm assistant professor of educational leadership at the University of San Francisco. And all of the jobs, so I won't list all of them, but I ended up running my youth program, which ended up being for all students, not just black boys. I taught that for 10 years in Oakland. And then I became principal of June Jordan School for Equity, one of 2 principals there. And then I did state policy work under the Chancellor's Office for the California Community Colleges for another 2.5 years. And I think all of those jobs, definitely some of my community college teaching, and then my teaching in Santa Rita County Jail and in San Quentin State Prison, all those things led me to my position now.
I went to school in Riverside, California, Arlington High School, and then I went to UC Riverside, so I'm a Highlander. And I got my political science degree there at UCR. And I worked in the community for a while after I was at UCR, and I was trying to find my Asian American identity. And so I worked in LA in a couple community-based organizations doing work with social justice. I was doing hate crimes work during when 9/11 happened, working with policy and things like that. And then I figured I needed to go to grad school because I was up against a lot of universities who wanted to partner with community-based organizations, and there was some language that they were using, and I was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I need to go to school, and I need to be where you're at. So I ended up coming here to SF State for my master's in Asian American Studies, just across the building, right over there. And then after I finished my master's, I worked some more. I'm a fan of taking breaks after degrees because I really want to apply what I have. You know, I want to apply my degrees to my work, And so I'm all about social justice, and I was a very big activist, and still am. And I worked at Oakland. I worked in Oakland. I did work with youth work out there at Kids First, and then I came out here, did young women's work at Girl Source. And at the same time, I've been working with Pinoy Educational Partnership since I moved to San Francisco. And what that is a pipeline, an ethnic studies pipeline where we teach ethnic studies in K through college in SFUSD. And so I started off as a teacher, moved up as a coordinator, then moved up as an associate director, and then moved up after I graduated from this program to the organizational director. And I do that full time along with consulting to create curriculum for ethnic studies in SFUSD. I adjunct over at USF down the hall from Derek's class. And then 4 years after my master's, I was like, I need to get a doctorate. I was gonna go to law school, actually, because I was a poli-sci major, and my hope was to be a lawyer, because that's what good Filipino girls are supposed to do, is follow their parents' advice. And of course, I was the rebel, and I said, no, I want to get a doctorate in education. And they were just like, you're getting the wrong doctorate, because it's supposed to be medical, girl. But so I ended up getting an EdD, because that's what I've been doing here in San Francisco, is education, and working with and partnering with universities and city colleges and schools in SFUSD to support the students here. And so it made sense to go into an EdD program. And I'm still working with PEP. It's been 14 years. I'm 14 years strong in PEP. along with adjuncting and consulting everywhere.
I guess I'd be the privileged white guy. My educational background, I was born and raised in San Diego. I went away to college when I was quite young and got thrown out and got in a lot of trouble. Was remanded to the custody of my parents, actually, until I turned 18 when I ran away. I went to a community college. I went to San Diego State. I got married very young and started making babies, so I never actually have gone to school full time during the day. I've always gone at night or on the weekend. So it took me 11 years to get a bachelor's degree from San Diego State in business. And then we moved up here to go to graduate school, and I went to the People's Republic of Berkeley over the other side there. Got an MBA. I was always a business guy. So I got an MBA. I worked at Apple Computer back in the 80s before they had adult supervision. And then after I left Apple, I started a company which I sold 4 years later to some guys in Chicago, and then I got a taste for starting companies. So I did 6 startup companies. Sort of sequentially, a couple of years at each one. Had some pretty good outcomes. We took, well, the one I sold, we took one public in '99. That was, just amazing. And then the last one I did, we sold to Cisco. So I stopped working. We both stopped working. My wife was doing a postdoc at Stanford, at the medical school there, and she lost her grant, and it was like, fuck it, we don't really have to do anything, so we just didn't. And then that got really old fast. We had about 2 years of not doing anything, and then she taught at UC Santa Cruz, lectured up there a couple times. She's a clinical psychologist, so she was lecturing on personality, and she said, oh, you should try this teaching thing. And so I applied at community colleges to be an adjunct business teacher, And I got hired at Mission College first, and it was the most fun I'd ever had. So I applied all over the place. I got hired at Cabrillo the next semester, so I was doing back and forth. And then I realized that I didn't understand. I went to a curriculum committee meeting to add a class. I wanted to add a class, So, and I followed all the rules. And I go to this curriculum committee meeting, and it's like it was totally goofy. They yelled at me and stuff, And I thought, this is crazy. I have no idea how this thing works. I knew how business worked, but I didn't understand at all how public education worked. I thought, I got to figure this out. So I decided to take some classes, and then I saw this thing pop up, and I was like, oh, look, a class, a whole program. I could go do that. So I applied here, and it was fascinating to me. This was really, because I'm probably really different than most of you. I didn't come up in this world. I came up in a completely different world. When we started Digital Impact, which is a company that we took public at $1.2 billion market cap, my partners in that company was a Korean guy and a Puerto Rican guy. And it never came up, It never came up. We had our heads down, and we were doing stuff. So the equity issues and the issues around, I always thought of technology as a lever for human activity, that you use technology as leverage. You use technology to solve problems. And I came into the program thinking I could take my technology background and, somehow use that to help address educational problems. And what an eye-opener that was, because educators don't use technology. Number one, they don't use it much, and then when they do, it turns out that we tend to use it to widen achievement gaps rather than narrow them. It becomes another source of problems. So that's been kind of interesting and frustrating. As far as the jobs that led to my current position, I'm tenured faculty at Cabrillo, which is weird because it's tenure. And then I'm the executive director of S4C, and I think the stuff that led to I've been a CEO, I've been a chief operating officer, I've been vice president of marketing at public companies, and so I think those help a lot. I mean, I had hard times along the way. You know, I was a drug addict for a while. So I sort of, I got it about hard times, but I didn't get it about race. You know, I didn't get that at all. And so it was, to me, it was just so much to learn and so fascinating. I remember going to Vidrell's, you know, we had a classmate, Vidrell, sorry? Franklin, yeah. It's my brain. I banged my brain, and I can't remember stuff now. An African-American woman who was a principal at a elementary school in Hunters Point. Mm-hmm. And she's talking about her school, and she's talking about, you know, guys getting murdered in front of the school and stuff, and it's like, just seriously, that happens? And she said, oh, you should come see it. And I think she was kind of surprised when I said, okay. And went and spent a day with her at her school, just seeing what it was like to be the principal of the school there. Fascinating. I mean, fascinating, and you know, wonderful learning experience. So for me, you know, this was invaluable.
And I think the power of the cohort, for us, even though there was a lot of differences, and we really needed to get to know each other and humanize each other and see where everyone was at. It took a while, but I think because we had classes that we were all kind of struggling with, we were like, how do we help each other so we can pass, you know, and understand what we're doing? And Ray's like a genius in statistics, and we were just like, Ray, can you help? We don't understand, we're reading numbers. And so we pulled the strength of all our cohort folks, and we're like, who's good at this, who's good at that? And we really facilitated that. So I think, like, as a new mother and like feeling insecure about my identity, you know, coming into the program, I felt like, you know, it was hard. I mean, I can tell you now, I graduated 2011, so I can tell you, oh, it was okay. But if you were to ask me, like, third year, second semester, I would have been like, I don't want to talk to anybody else. This is very difficult. But I felt like there was a community in this space that was able to help, not just with the students, but also the faculty. You know, there's faculty that really helped out. But there was a lot of things I was very critical about education, and I would voice it, and I learned that I really had to show people where I was at too, you know, and really help them understand, like, the kind of work that I was doing, and what it means, you know, when I'm talking about colonialism and decolonizing education, you know. And so they're like, what are you talking about? But I wanted to be able to teach that too, because y'all are the leaders that come out of this program into the schools that serve the young people, you know, that serve the teachers, that teach the young people. So I had that responsibility too, to, you know, if I know this stuff, I want to learn from you. I want you to learn from me, and, you know, and it's a big network, you know. And so I think what I got out of the EdD program too is that a lot of us still keep in touch with each other, and kind of like, what are you doing today, or what are you doing now? Or if someone wants to get out of their career, we're like, let's help you find a job, you know, like, let's figure out how our network can help you. But yeah, I mean, the program was difficult, but it was fast, it was intense. But now it's like, I look at it, and it's prepared me for addressing issues like race, like class, like gender, like sexuality, in a classroom, in a space. So when I teach at USF and I'm challenged with, you know, why do I have to read people of color articles in a research? I teach research methods. So they're like, why do I have to read this? Like, because you teach students of color, and you have to understand where they're coming from, so you can teach them and serve them holistically, right? And so it has prepared me with the language. So now that I have this language, I can speak to educators. I can go to principals and go to other schools and build relationships with them and show them that ethnic studies does work in K through 12.
I love my cohort, so we still get together about 2 to 3 times a year as a cohort. I felt that the program, in many ways, it prepared me for just existing in higher education, which is, to me, a very problematic world. It's a lot of illusion, a lot of elevated egos that contribute very little to global transformation, and a lot of competition and an industry based on inculcating insecurity into most of its members, both students and professors. So my cohort experience of kind of really coming close together and being really bonded. You know, we had a vice president of a college in our cohort. We had 4 principals, a dean, an associate superintendent, and like 4 program directors. That was our cohort. And so we looked at our instructors when they weren't very good with a very critical eye, because all of us were already in leadership positions in high stress situations. And so in terms of equity, I think the program provided I think a really good introduction and an opening for folks that may not have, you know, confronted it in that way. And so I was very proud of that element of it, that we had students in our cohort that really should have been confronted with these issues years earlier because they were in education in particular. But then some of us, you know, I'm black. I was raised black in Oakland, you know, African American but raised black. So I'm proud to be black. I'm proud to be in alliance with all oppressed peoples throughout the world. Excuse me, throughout the world. Raised in a very violent city at the time, beautiful city. Oakland was very beautiful and also violent. And so for me, I thought the program at times, like most programs, in a very conventional way, did not go deep enough. But that's not a critique of this program as opposed to other programs. This program to me goes deeper than many of the things that I see in my current institution. So I'm very proud of this program. I think one of the things that it also helped me do is just like build up that endurance for the BS. A lot of BS, right? And I'm no stranger to education. I've been teaching a long time in my community, you know, and in other communities. I was a freeway flyer between De Anza College and Laney College in the Department of Sociology. And so really just having instructors that were in the field and, you know, they're presidents of colleges and doing, that was really important, having great instructors like Jamal and various others to kind of like help frame what's actually going on in education to make some of it such a BS environment was really helpful, because then when you go back out there, I mean, yeah, the language is there, but it's the matrix. So you spend your time in here really looking into the matrix from a fairly safe place. And then so when you get out there and the matrix is coming at you still, you can use some of the skills you learned here to defeat it. But that heart and that courage is not something that any doctoral program teaches. Like, you're not trained to actually develop the courage that you need to do the right thing. So that's where most, if not all, doctoral programs fall short. San Francisco State would not be an exception to that. But that's the standard. In terms of what we were taught and who was teaching us and the beautiful cohort I have, I couldn't be more proud.
So you go through all these leadership classes, right? And you learn all the leadership theories. And I remember sitting there and I was like, nope, that doesn't fit my org. Nope, that's not, you know, I'm not transactional, obviously. You know, I'm like, okay, maybe transformational. Maybe. Okay, yes, social justice. Okay. And then Allison's like, we got to come up with our own theory. Because if that's how we grow the field too. But it's also with its ethnic studies field, a lens, and how we teach our teachers through critical pedagogy, that there's something about our praxis as leaders. And so she developed critical leadership praxis. I took that theory and I ran with it. And so with that theory, it's more of like, how does a leader think about themselves, right? In a view of self-determination, self-connection, self-actualization, along with your leadership as a person that's engaged with the community that you teach, you lead with in the schools, but also the community around it that, you know, that influences the schools, you know, like the parents, the the community-based organizations, the services. How do we all as leaders work with them, right? How do we stay community engaged, and then also looking at how social justice and equity has a lot to do with your leadership. And so I still continue to develop my work. I've published an article, it's in press right now for a book on ethnic studies, and we're thinking about like leadership in ethnic studies and how we need to theorize that more. What does that mean to have a social justice lens and lead? And I've gone to conferences. I just came back from AERA. I had a symposium where I did my research on critical leadership praxis, and I've been asked to speak at other places too about my leadership theories. And it's funny to see your stuff cited in other people's work. And so at the same time, it's cool, because I'm like, oh, it's me.
And so my dissertation ended up, it was on my school. So it was like this, this autoethnographical thing, because I was only there for, I think, 2 years when I started the program, and I ended up leaving. And so after my third, because of health issues. And so we had done this stuff, and everybody from the district would always ask, well, they were accusatory, in this rear tone of like, how did you raise test scores? And then you still have a high suspension rate. You raised test scores and you didn't gentrify your population. And I bet you can't tell me how you did. I said, I can tell you how we did it because we did it. Like, what do you, well, there's no research. And I'd be like, what do you talk, why would you need research if you have the impact? So other people could know. Well, how did I know? See, I bet you there's other people all over the country that come from the communities you serve that could tell you how to do it right. Mm-hmm. And I bet you, as far as research goes, there's already been research on damn near everything you want to know in education, but you haven't read it. So you ask us to repeat it, and we get in this cycle of repeating answers that were discovered 30, 40, 60 years ago. And then you know how we know it was done? Because we cite them. So I'm like, dude, fine, I'll do a project on it so we can find out. And what was dope about it, which is why, I appreciate research, because all research is formalized inquiry. So I appreciate it because it's knowledge and learning. I just don't appreciate how it's codified in certain spaces, but I appreciate research. And so I thought that one of the key elements to why the school would improve was this masterful professional development that myself and my co-director had designed. And through the research, I found out that that was not it at all. Okay? And folks were like, oh, no, that was nice. But nah, that didn't really, no, that wasn't really it. And so in that, we also found, so anyway, just the short story, because I can be really loquacious. I'm a Sagittarius. And the short story is, what we found really were these barriers to the school's progression previous to this stuff. So what came up really, when you're asking what changed it, what came up was what was holding them back, which came up with these theories that later I dubbed educational enablers, right? Which is really taking the psychotherapy, the theory out of psychotherapy of enabler and attaching it in education. So it's not just about empathy, right? And it's not just about coddling. It's really a psychological dynamic that is established as within the collective culture of schooling, particularly in the context of a high proportion of white female educators coming into communities of color to teach, within a political dynamic that suggests a pathologization of the student population and their families, and the healing element being a nurturing approach to teaching. So what ends up being is this, what's codified is a white middle class feminine notion of nurturing a pathologized subject. And that becomes the culture that the educational discourse is had in, right? So it becomes this, they're so traumatized, they're so hurt, and what has happened is this patriarchal system of racism has not seen them as hurt people. So in my feminine construct and as a middle class construct, I will come in and hug you into success. And that was problematic. So I ended up writing about that for, I don't know, 160, 170 pages or whatever.
My study was mixed methods. I looked at 4.5 million student records of community college students who enrolled in a a class that was offered in both an online format and a face-to-face format at the college that they were enrolled in during the semester that they took it. So theoretically, these are folks who had a choice between an online class and a face-to-face class. And it turns out over a 3-year period there, and I only looked at Latino and white students. It turns out over a 3-year period there's about 4.5 million students in California who sort of met that filter. And then I did a statistical analysis of the outcomes of those students, and I broke it out by ethnicity and gender and by the type of class. So there's you know, career technical education classes, transfer classes, basic skills classes. So that was the quantitative part, and then the qualitative part of my study was to follow a cohort of Latino students at Cabrillo through their online class from the time before they enrolled. They had enrolled but hadn't started, and then I followed them through a semester, basically, their experience with their class. And it turned out that the short version is that the way that we implement online instruction in the state of California right now in the community college system is a completely automated banking model of education. It's not relational at all. It's pretty much plug in the textbook that McGraw-Hill provided and then put it on autopilot, and you know, students read, maybe watch a video, answer, take tests, and never really interact with their professors along the way. And of course, as you might imagine, that would tend to advantage some students and disadvantage other students. And for Latino students, because the sort of, especially in our community where it is all, you know, Mexico and Central America, basically, there's, you know, although they're characterized, I think we report them as Hispanic students, you know, there's nobody from any place except Mexico and Central America. And socioculturally, the idea of a mutually respectful relationship between the professor and the student seems to be an important aspect of education, and it's completely missing from the way that we do our online stuff. So what happens is the online implementation that we do exacerbates the achievement gap. And what's interesting, though, I mean, the thing that I thought was interesting, because I do love the statistics, if you think about it, if you take an online class and a face-to-face class, and you look at the proportion of Latino student versus white students in those two modalities, in the online class, the white students are overrepresented in the online class, and in the face-to-face class, the Latino students are overrepresented. And if there is an existing achievement gap, even if it was the same achievement gap in both places, when you aggregate those up, it has a tendency to overstate the success of the online class because there's more white kids in the online class, and it has a tendency to understate the success rate in the face-to-face class. So it ends up making online classes look like they're actually pretty okay, when in fact, when you disaggregate the data, the white kids are doing way worse in the online classes. The Latino kids are doing way worse in the online classes. It's just that theirs is worser. And nobody does well in online classes the way that we do them in the community college system. That's the short version. One of the things that Dr. Cook said at one point was the only good dissertation is one that's done. And that sort of stuck with me.